Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here back again after about 1.5 years, I think. So certainly this place reminds us of the basic values that all of us as humans should possess, and it is good to keep coming back, if only for that reason. Okay. The abstract printed in the book is different from that, because when I was sending it, I forgot that it is supposed to be some kind of a school. So what has happened is that the pendulum has swung to the other end. That would have been rather too technical. Now this is very, very simple. So simple that you can look upon every slide as some kind of a toy exercise, so everyone can relax. Okay? So there is some amount of Hilbert space, but not to the extent that Pati used. There is a little bit of group theory which comes at the fag end, but that is only to allow us to state results as quote-unquote theorems, because it looks nice. Okay. This is the title of the talk, and the idea is that suppose there is a function, and so you have a range, and you have a domain and a range. So you have a function which is defined from the domain to the range, and this function has a certain shape, and I want to know what the shape is. Now, the definition of shape is, of course, tricky. It depends on what the person looks at. So we have to be able to somewhat carefully define that. And there would be no unique definition, so we have to be conscious of that. So we will see how to do that. Actually, we will not do that. We will see that it emerges naturally. But some of the examples could be, is the function constant? That is the kind of question that one would ask in Deutsch's algorithm, when you had a qubit going to a qubit, 0, 1 going to 0, 1. Or if you have a more complicated function, let us say there are 2 qubits, and the values are 0, 1, 2, 3, then there are something like 4 to the power of 4 functions possible. I can ask, how many functions have 2 minima? How many functions are piecewise continuous? How many functions have maxima? And the question is it possible to determine these things by minimal number of measurements? Obviously, if I were to look at a classical circuit, then in most of the cases, you will have to actually sample all the values of the function. In an example like Deutsch-Jozsa, I think which will come in the next slide. Yeah, in an example like Deutsch-Jozsa algorithm, okay, you have a very, very special class of functions. Either the function is constant or it is balanced, which is the reason why you are able to perform a very simple generalization. You are able to very simply generalize your Deutsch algorithm circuit. But here what we want to do is to look at a more complicated situation and try to develop a theory. Okay, that is the whole idea. One thing I should not forget, one very important thing that I should not forget is, okay, I am from IIT Kanpur. These 2 students are undergraduate students who will be graduating next semester. Both of them are in their 5th year. Pranay will do high energy physics, but Sunil wants to do quantum information. Okay, fine. So this is some work which I have done with undergraduate students, which I have thoroughly enjoyed. Okay. So now coming back to something like Deutsch-Jozsa, what we have done is to ask a very, very simple question, and we are able to build a simple circuit. Of course, the importance of Deutsch-Jozsa is not in the generalization, but it's very important in terms of n qubits. If you had some n qubits and 2 to the power of n plus 1 possibilities, okay, you would have had to go a large number of steps to determine whether the function is balanced or constant. Okay? What Deutsch-Jozsa tells us is that there is one measurement that is enough to do. So what we would like to do is to sort of generalize. Okay. Now here is an introductory slide. Okay, let me see how So what we want to do is to try to build some quantum circuits in order to look at it. Obviously, whenever we speak of quantum information, what we have is non-locality and superposition, which together gives rise to entanglement. We want to speed up. And of course, the best examples that we have are of Shor's algorithm, which allows you to factorize at an exponentially faster rate. There is the Simon's period finding algorithm, which is actually used by Shor because of the quantum Fourier transform. And there is the Grover search algorithm, which has been mentioned repeatedly, which gives a quadratic speed up. Okay, fine. So let us start with a little bit of a warm-up before I proceed. And I want to make a few statements about Deutsch algorithm. I think we are all familiar with it, but it doesn't harm to repeat. So what you have is essentially 4 possibilities in this. There are 2 constant functions and there are 2 non-constant functions. The 2 constant functions are 0 will go to 0, 1 will go to 0, or both 0 and 1 will go to 1. And the non-constant functions are, one of them goes to 0, another goes to 1. Now, what is it that enables the Deutsch algorithm to actually answer whether a function is constant or not is that, in some sense, you are able to directly measure the value f of 0 plus f of 1 in base 2, which is not allowed classically. So both the constant functions give you 0, right? 0 plus 0 is 0, 1 plus 1 is 0, whereas the non-constant functions will give you 1 because 0 plus 1 is 1, however you may add. The other important thing is that there are the distinction between states in the, rather vectors in the Hilbert space and quantum mechanical states is that the state of a quantum mechanical system is not represented by a vector in the Hilbert space, it is represented by a ray in the Hilbert space. And we obtain a ray in the Hilbert space by multiplying it by an arbitrary phase, assuming the normalization. So when I perform these unitary transformations, of course they are reversible, but then the states which I don't want to distinguish, the two constant functions, they go to two different vectors in the Hilbert space, but they correspond to the same ray because they differ from a phase. That is what I am able to do. And the same thing with the non-constant functions. So what you want to distinguish should belong to different rays. That is the whole idea. Okay? Within a given ray, there would be an infinite number of states because I can keep on multiplying by an arbitrary phase. Is that right? Corresponding to all the points in a circle. That is of no consequence to me. These are the two simple features which are indeed exploited in the Deutsch algorithm. And of course, classically there is no such analog, okay, which is the reason why Deutsch algorithm works very well. Okay, this is a kind of perspective that we want to give. Deutsch-Jozsa also exploits the same thing. Of course, as you can see, the output again will be in terms of the 0, 0, 0 or 1, 1, 1. Again, you dump all the states which you don't want to distinguish into different states belonging to the same ray. And all the functions that you want to distinguish should belong to the different rays. They should be different. 0, 0 is completely different from 0, 1. That is the way we do. So that is exactly what happens here also. So when you make a measurement, of course, you don't determine the vector, but you determine the ray. Sorry, I think I used the word state. I should not have used that. Different vectors belonging to the same state. When you make a measurement, you are conscious only of the ray, that is the vector multiplied by an arbitrary phase. So that is perfectly fine. That is the classical counterpart. And as soon as I get the outcome, I will say, oh, this function is constant or this function is balanced. Fine. Now what we want to do is to ask whether we can generalize this question in some particular form. And if it is possible to answer all the questions in one shot, or if not, whether we can have some kind of a categorization of functions. Look at Deutsch-Jozsa algorithm again. You had n qubits, okay? There are 2 to the power of n values that it can take. So there are 2 to the power of n, 2 to the power of 2 to the power of 2 to the power of n functions. But what Deutsch-Jozsa did was not to ask how will I distinguish all the functions. They asked a simpler question, either constant or balanced, and they were able to answer. In a similar manner, what we want to do is to ask ourselves whether generalizations of such questions can be asked. Of course, the question should not be trivial. For example, I don't want to ask a question like, is f of 0 1? For that, I don't need a quantum circuit. All that I have to do is to measure f of 0. Is that right? A classical measurement would do the job. It should not be trivial like that. And then this should provide a reasonable generalization of the Deutsch-Jozsa. Okay? So this is something of a program that I would like to outline in the next 30 or 35 minutes. Is that okay? It is possible to state the results. People have been speaking of top to down or down to top. It is possible to actually state the results in the form of a theorem and then work out various examples, but I won't do that because we are physicists. What I will do is I will start with the simplest example of 2 qubits. So you have 4 possibilities in the domain and 4 possibilities in the range. We will illustrate all the results and then go on to state the general results for the n qubit system. Okay. And I believe that in computer science there is a name given to these questions, and these are called property testing. That is what my computer science colleagues were telling me. And there are many, many nice algorithms in computer science where they say that if you have n possible values and you want to test a property, you can write an efficient algorithm which can do in terms of some subleading terms in n. Is that okay? Maybe a fraction or whatever. So this is part of what would be called as a property testing in computer science. Okay? And let us see what a quantum circuit can do. Okay. Now, as I told you, I am going to start with some extraordinarily simple examples. And here are some illustrations. Okay. Now what this figure shows is actually a set of 16 functions. Probably the 16 functions come in the next this one. So I have 0, 1, 2, 3 going to 0, 1, 2, 3. Remember, the total number of functions is 256. 4 to the power of 4 is what I have. It's an enormous number because it keeps growing that fast, n to the power of n, right? And capital N is 2 to the power of n, so to say. So what we do is, we look at the first 4 functions. So the constant that I have here is the topmost function has been shown. You can translate it vertically and get the other 4 functions. Is that right? 2, 1, and 3. F of x is equal to 0, f of x equal to 1, f of 2 equal to f of 3. And here, this is what we call as some kind of a plate or a basin function. So what you have is, it jumps by 2 units and then goes up again. Now again you can translate. Of course, when I come to 0, I should ask myself what happens. What happens is actually, since we are subtracting modulo 2, it will go up. So that is something like a sawtooth function. Again, I can translate it up and down. And the last one is an even step. Is that okay? So one thing that you find is that these functions are sort of, for example, if you look at this and this, these are piecewise constant. Is that okay? This is also piecewise constant because these two are endpoints, but this function is not piecewise. So instead of asking the most general question, I will ask a modest question. I'll ask, look here, I cannot handle 256 functions, but I want to know if I can handle these 16 functions. Can I build a quantum circuit which tells me whether the function is constant or whether it belongs to plate or a basin or the sawtooth category or to the even step? So the student Sunil was fond of the word category. He was calling this as categorization of the functions. Okay? There is a definite reason for choosing these particular 4 classes. Is that okay? And we will come to that later. Fine. So all the 16 functions are displayed here. Okay? Now because of the periodicity addition modulo 2, you see that as I keep moving down, I generate these functions, and these are mirror reflection symmetry. So these functions have extraordinarily beautiful symmetries. That is something that we should notice. So in that sense, it is a nice generalization of what Deutsch and Jozsa would do. But we will certainly overcome this limitation. As I told you, we are going to play around with the circuit. We are not going to state theorems to start with. So I want to play around. And what I want to do is to take, for example, the Deutsch circuit and make minimal changes. Since I have 2 qubits, I have the 2 qubits at the top, and I will put 2 qubits at the bottom, which is not actually what to do in Deutsch or Deutsch-Jozsa, okay? And then, of course, I have my oracle, which will implement the function. This is the unitary transformation, y plus f of x, which will take care of it. And then there is the Hadamard, and there is where the reading takes place. Now, what are the changes that I want to make? I want to make, I said, minimal changes. I will put a gate here, chi, which I have to find out in order to determine whether I can distinguish those 4 classes of functions. And here is a phi. There is another gate that I want to put here to distinguish those functions. And we want this phi and chi to be as simple as possible. Okay. Now, if I were to go back to my previous slide, I can assure you that I need not put a chi at all. That is to say, I can put a buffer gate or an identity gate. All that you need to choose is a suitable phi gate, and let us show what that gate is. Okay. That phi gate is actually a simple phase-giving gate. It's okay? You have 0, 1, 2, 3. These are actually roots of unity, except that there is a small error here. 2 pi by 4, 3 is what should have been written. So the claim is that if you were to use this gate in the previous circuit, actually there are 4 possible outcomes, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1. These are my computational states. And believe me, those 4 functions which I wrote will collapse to one of those states. Is that okay? Here is a very, very simple thing that works. Okay? And one of the interesting features of this gate phi is that, in fact, this is one of the elements of quantum Fourier transform. This gate, although it looks complicated, is actually single qubit gates. It's a product of 2 single qubit gates. You don't need entanglement. You don't have to construct a 2 qubit gate. It's a very, very simple gate, and it works. Okay. Probably the next slide has some information on that. So what we have is the implementation through this oracle. First of all, what we do is to perform through this gate. My chi is simply identity. So we work that out, and these are the various possible outcomes. For example,
what collapses to 0, 0 will be I to the power of f0 plus f1 plus f2 plus f3. Then you have differences and sums in different orders. One can easily see that if my function were constant, f of 0 equal to f of 1 equal to f of 2 equal to f of 3, then all of them pick up the same phase, and of course it goes to 0, 0. Now, similarly, what you have is different linear combinations which are coming. So what we have is a very nice mapping. All the constant functions collapse to the computational basis 0, 0. My Plato basin function collapses to 1, 1. My sawtooth collapses to 0, 1. Even step collapses to 1, 0. Okay? What I would like to emphasize is that actually there is not much of a cost involving, because we are employing only a single qubit gate. At this point, it appears to be some kind of a magic or accidental thing that it is working. It is actually not accidental. There is a certain underlying theory, but we will come to that later. Okay. So functions from different categories produce orthogonal final states. That is the statement that we want to make, which is the principle behind all quantum circuits. Okay. And I think whatever I said has been written. The students wanted to emphasize that these functions belonging to a given category cannot be actually distinguished by the circuit. So to say, for example, that circuit can distinguish between constant and Plato basin, but not for constant functions. Is that okay? If you really want to do that, we will say, okay, perform one more measurement and look at f of 0. Suppose you perform, it goes to the state 0, 0, you have to perform one more measurement. So two measurements will uniquely fix, in some sense, what your state is, at least in the space of constant functions. But anyway, what is of interest to us is categorization. Okay. So what is written here is that all functions belonging to a different to the same category collapse to the same state multiplied by different overall phases. Okay, it is all written in different languages, so that people belonging to depending on their taste, can actually pick up whatever they want. Okay. Now, having said this, we want to ask ourselves, what are the generic features of this particular circuit to work, so that I can actually generalize. Okay. Now, if you look at the functions, some functions are invertible, some functions are not invertible. So let me look at a function which is constant. So obviously I don't know how to go back, okay, because it is not invertible transformation. Some functions could be invertible, some functions are not invertible. But the great thing about our oracle is that it is always a unitary transformation and they are always invertible. Is that right? Because what we have is y plus f of x, so I can always subtract f of x and go back to my original, this one. Therefore, if I look at all possible function implementations to the oracle, there are 256 possible functions. Therefore, there are 256 possible unitary transformations. These are the unitary transformations that generate my functions. Is that right? Now, normally when one speaks of a number like 256 unitary transformations, they of course form a group, because I can add, I can subtract, we start wondering. But again, because of the very, very special nature of the function implementation, simply through the binary addition, is that okay? These form a completely commutative group. They are an abelian group. There is no non-commutativity at all. So if I were to look at, for example, two successive implementations, I will simply get fi of x plus fg of x. You can add, you can subtract. So what is this group? This group is very simple. You had 0, 0, 0, 0. To the first 0, you can add any of the four numbers, 0, 1, 2, 3. The second 0, you can add any of the four numbers, 0, 1, 2, 3. For the third, 0, 1, 2, 3. Fourth, 0, 1, 2, 3. So this group is nothing but the addition group modulo 4, Z4, Z4, cross Z4, cross Z4, cross Z4. It's as simple a group as that. And with this addition, we are able to actually implement all the things. Therefore, what should we do? What we should therefore do is to go back and look at this circuit, or look at this implementation and ask, what are all the transformations that I did in order to look at these functions, in order to generate these functions? The important statement that one has to make, now I will tell you why we chose these 4 sets of functions, 16 functions, is that if I start with 0, 0, 0, there are simple additions which will take you up. Then I can move from the set of constant functions to this by a suitable change. What do? 0 will goes to 0, but 1 will go to 2, 2 will go to 2, and 3 will go to 3. After that, I will add them up again. Similarly here, if you look at the set of all function generators which come through the oracle, there are 16 of them, right? Because 0, 0, 0, 0 can go to 0, 0, 0, 0. That is the identity, because this is my reference state, if you feel like. These 16 functions actually form a subgroup. Is that okay? So what this quantum circuit did was to look at a set of functions which is generated by a subgroup of 256 functions. Very simple. And then we are able to build a circuit which tells us how you distinguish between different categories. Okay. Now this is a very, very crucial piece of information for me, because I want to make some generalizations at a later stage. But this is certainly the most important thing for us, and we will see how to use that. Okay. As I told you, these are based on exceedingly simple considerations. So the people will, you can ask actually the guy who supplies tea to be ready quite early in time. Yeah, I'm doing very well. Yeah, fine. Now let us look at it a little bit more formally, a little bit more mathematically, and ask what these unitary transformations are. Is that okay? So this is something, this is the general structure. So there are 4 possible functions which we will call AF0, AF1, AF2, AF3. Is that okay? F is the label for the function that you want to generate. And what are A0, A1, A2, A3? A0 is simply the identity. My A1 is one particular permutation of these quantities, 1, 0, 0. A2 is another permutation. A3 is another permutation. So these are the 4 basic matrices. And my any unitary transformation which generates a given function, is that okay, can always be written in this particular form. That is what I write. AF0, AF1, AF2, AF3. Only the order in which they occur changes, but these are the only 4 that come. Suppose I want to generate only 0, 0, 0, 0. I don't want to change anything at all. Then I will put a A0, 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 A0. As simple as that. Because it is simply the identity. Nothing changes. Nothing moves. Or if I want to generate some other function, I will be able to appropriately choose them. So meaning, if I were to employ a compact notation, U of f, this U of f, which is actually the oracle, it consists of F0, F1, F2, F3, which are the 4 function values taken by 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay. So this is a sophisticated way, not too sophisticated way of writing whatever we know. Okay. Now I have to introduce a little bit of a notion of a coset. One could have probably even avoided this, worked out an example and come back to that. But probably this is the right stage, one never knows, okay, what is it that we want to do? Now you have given me a group of 256 functions, unitary transformations, which actually generate these functions. And I have found a subgroup of 16 elements. Okay. Now there are other elements of the group which do not belong to these 16 elements. That is, I do not have access to those functions. I chose only these 16 functions. But one observation that I make is, starting with this particular group, I can generate 16 cosets. Is that right? How do I get a coset? Take this group, subgroup, and act on all the group elements. Now when the subgroup acts on an element which belongs to the subgroup itself, then I will get back the subgroup. That will be the identity. And you know, for an abelian group, every subgroup is a normal subgroup. You don't have to worry. The left cosets are the same as the right cosets. Then I have other 15 cosets. That is what I have. Now the beauty of the coset is that you give me one element of that coset, I know all the elements of the coset. What do I mean by that? I will take an element which does not belong to my subgroup. Okay, that is what was denoted by f prime. Yeah, f prime of 0, whatever. It does not belong to the subgroup. I pick up an element which does not belong to the subgroup, and I simply find the coset by adding my original group, the group multiplication. And the group multiplication is actually addition modulo 2 here. I generate another 16 elements, I generate another 16 elements, so on and so forth. So we can see that all the 256 functions that are possible actually belong to different cosets which are generated by subgroup. Now it's a different question as to how many subgroups are there having 16 elements. We will come to that later. Is that okay? Or I may not be able to come. But given the subgroup that I know how to do that, so the next question that I am going to ask is the following. I hope that circuit will appear here. No, so I will have to go back. Okay. Now I will ask myself whether I can actually introduce an additional gate chi here, which will be sensitive to the coset that I am interested in. That is, sensitive to the set of functions that I am interested in. So if I were to write a gate appropriate to the class of 4 functions again, is that okay? Depending on which coset that I am going to choose, then I should be able to do the job, which is exactly what we want to do. So what we do is to move on to the slide. So we were done with this. So here is the way of obtaining various cosets. That is what is there. And for the sake of completeness, I should tell you how to generate all the cosets, and these are the numbers. Remember, all functions can be obtained by additions with respect to 0. You have 0, 0, 0, 0. This is the coset corresponding to the subgroup. 1, 0, 0, 0 is f of 0 goes to 1, all the other 3 goes to 0, and now add all the normal group elements to that, you will generate another 16 elements. So there are 16 such cosets, each containing 16 elements, and they exhaust completely the 256 elements. What I have done, achieved so far, is a very, very small thing, is that, okay, I have looked at only the functions belonging to this particular subgroup, which is a particular coset. I should be able to find functions corresponding to this, 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 and so on, and I want to look at the gate chi, whether I can achieve that. Okay. Now, here is a figure which is somewhat complicated. Actually, there's a problem here, standing. I mean, I don't know, okay, because I cannot see if I want to show this. So what this actually shows is to how to go from what the action of cosets is, how to go from the set of all unitary transformations belonging to one particular coset to another coset. I believe that I have explained it in words, so we don't have to worry about it. If we wanted to write a paper, of course, we will have to write all these things, but right now we don't have to worry. The essence is that you had f0 prime, f1 prime, f2 prime, f3 prime. These belong to the subgroup. I add number like 0, 1, 1, 0, it will go and sit in the appropriate coset. That is what is shown. 0, 1, 1, 0, 2, 2, 0, 0 will go to 3, 3, 0, 0, so on and so forth. Okay? These are for the functions. Okay. And any function also characterizes the coset. Here is an illustration. These were the set of my original 16 functions. Is that right? Now I want to look at a function which is displaced by 3 units. That was not there in my original function. So what do? To this, actually in this particular case, I add 1. Addition of 1 actually brings it to 0, modulo 4. Is that right? That is what I am going to do. So 0, 1, 1, 0 will do the job. And these 16 functions I claim belong to the coset 0, 1, 1, 0. So here is a very, very simple example. I think it is quite vivid. It does not require any further explanation. Okay. Now, what is the phase gate that we want to implement? Okay. So I am afraid I have to go back. I don't know how to manipulate it with this one. We said that the transformation from one coset to another coset is through these elements G0, G1, G2, G3. So F0 prime, F1 prime, F2 prime, F3 prime go to G0, G1, G2, G3. That is, we have to choose this case appropriately. These are the addition by numbers modulo 4. Okay, that is what I have to do. Therefore, if you remember that gate chi, that chi actually should depend on that. Okay, that is what we want to say, and that is what is said here. Now, what can this gate be? If I am going to add k0, k1, k2, k3 to my function to a new coset, that should be offset by my phase gate. Therefore, I will write a general structure I to the power of 4 minus k0, 4 minus k1, 4 minus k2, 4 minus k3. When I had my 16 functions belonging to the subgroup, k0, k1, k2, k3 were 0. Now I want to choose k0, k1, k2, k3 such that the new set of functions will again go to 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1. That is what I want to do. Okay. So let me explain again here what I want to do. I want to distinguish the set of these 16 functions. I am not interested in these functions anymore. So there is no identity here because this is set of 4 functions, this is another set of 4 functions, this is another set of 4 functions, this is another set of 4 functions. I want to add a simple gate, a phase gate, such that it will tell me, for example, this will collapse to 0, 0. All these fellows will be belonging to 0, 0 except for an overall phase. Maybe this is 0, 1, maybe this is 1, 0, 1, 1. I don't remember that, we will find that out. And I want to introduce a gate. Okay. And the gate that I want to introduce is as simple as that. 4 minus k0, 4 minus k1, 4 minus k2, 4 minus k3, and we want to say whether such a thing works or not. Well, all that you have to do is to put that and ask whether it will collapse to a state or not. And here indeed you see that this first category of functions 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 2, 2, 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, they all collapse to the state 0, 0. So when I perform a measurement in the final state, if I find 0, 0, I have the first set of them. The second set of functions will give me 1, 1. The third set of functions correspond to 0, 1, 1, 0. So I should remember that 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1, 0. So if I were to go back to my state, okay, here it is. All these functions will collapse to 0, 0. All these functions will collapse to 1, 1. They will collapse to 0, 0. They will collapse to 1, 0. So now we are able to build circuits by generalizing our question. You tell me that I have a set of 16 functions which belong to this category, to this kind of property testing. I will produce a circuit for you. You tell me I have another set of 16 functions which belong to this particular set. I will make a minimal modification for that. I can give it for you. So now there are no prices for guessing. Corresponding to every one of those cosets are 16 subsets of 16 functions. There are K0, K1, K2, K3 which will do the job. Is that okay? And we have identified all of them. Okay. So how much more time do I have? 15, 20 minutes, right? Yeah, actually I am almost reaching the end of the talk. I can actually speculate a little bit. Okay. Because it is extraordinarily simple. Okay, fine. So now we know how to handle that. There are more general questions that one has to ask, which I will postpone. But whenever physicists teach entanglement, we get fired up. We speak of, Bell's inequality, CHSH inequality, EPR correlations, locality, non-locality, hidden variable theory, and so on. And there is one thing that we emphasize. Principle of superposition is not quantum because classical waves are always showing them. Non-locality is not quantum. You can have a perfectly non-local correlation. Bell gave the example of Bertelsmann socks. Those of us who have read, is that right? One socks is red, one socks is green. You take them, closing your eyes, put them in two different boxes, send one to Australia and send another to some other continent. When you open up one, if it is red, you know the other is green. There is a non-local correlation. So non-local correlations are there in classical systems. You don't need a quantum mechanics. Superposition is there in classical systems. But it is the deadly combination of non-locality and superposition which gives rise to EPR correlations. Is that right? That is the essence of quantum mechanics. And we want to proclaim that is essentially quantum. So whenever there is a principle of superposition, we are not worried about that. Now if you go back and look at, for example, the quantum Fourier transform, you perform a quantum Fourier transform, but then it's a completely separable state that you get at the end. You start with a separable state initially, you end up with a completely separable state. There is no entanglement whatsoever. On the other hand, if you look at teleportation, entanglement is essential. So people continuously debate whether entanglement is required, or if it is required, to what extent it is required in order to do quantum information. In fact, one of the very interesting questions is regarding NMR quantum computation. There are the pseudo-pure states, and if you employ many of the existing criteria, they will tell you there is no entanglement at all. But with pseudo-pure states, people have been able to do a lot of things. Dr. Anil Kumar's group in IISc, they have been able to even implement Deutsch algorithm, okay, or doing quantum computation. So what I will do is I will take some kind of a digression and I'll ask where entanglement is, and I think there is something for us to learn. Okay. Now again, if I were to go back and look at the first set of 16 functions, where there was only a phase gate involving single qubit operations, that is what we call as the local operations. My chi was simply identity. There is absolutely no entanglement. Deutsch algorithm has no entanglement. Deutsch dosa has no entanglement. But now I am able to build a circuit, in fact, which will distinguish subsets of 16 each, 16 subsets of 16 functions. That is what I am able to do. So I want to ask where the entanglement is. And so, okay, here is a recall for those of you who might have forgotten what we did with the cosets. So cosets consisting of UGI is simply, this is the group multiplication, K0, K1, K2, K3, but it is actually the addition. These are the 16 cosets that I have. And for finding the function belonging to this 0, 0, 0, 0 coset, I did not need any entanglement. In fact, I will call this a trivial circuit in that sense, and the functions belonging to that also to be trivial in that sense. In principle, in order to find this, you would not need the full power of quantum mechanics. Wave mechanics would do. That is what I would say. Let us ask what happens to the other 14 functions. Okay. So here is the answer. So we have simply used the pure state concurrence as a measure. In fact, that is required to specify that E equal to 0.707 Otherwise, this number would not have a meaning if I did not tell you what measure I used. So this is a nice color-coded thing. All the black ones correspond to unentangled state. Is that okay? If you want to find the 16 functions belonging to this 0, 0, 0, 0, the first set, you don't need any entanglement. This you don't need an entanglement. Here you don't need an entanglement. But if you want to find functions corresponding to this, where I add 2 units, but I keep the other 0, and then there are, of course, further translations, you need fully entangled state. So what is it that I mean? I hope I have the circuit gets repeated. No, it is not repeated, is it? The circuit is repeated here. Then I can go back. I am looking at the top. You see, I have 0 to the power, Now look at this, I am looking at the top. I am preparing my state here. I am not interested in what happens here, and I am asking the question whether an entangled state is required. My Hadamard, of course, will not create any entanglement because it is H cross 2, it is a local operation. I am asking the question about this chi. Is that okay? This chi creates an entangled initial state if I want to distinguish those functions. So now let me go back and come back to this thing. So if I want to distinguish 16 functions corresponding to these categories, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 cosets, that is to say 16 into 5, 80 functions out of the 256, is that okay? You certainly need 100% entangled state. You need a genuine quantum circuit. Let me put it that way. If I am interested in odd translations by 3, is that okay? Then you need a partially entangled state as a preparation because that is 0.707. It is actually 1 over root 2. And then for the small subset 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, is that okay? There you don't need any entanglement at all. So what was missing? Something like Deutsch-Josa. Because Deutsch circuit is a very, very special case of this because constant and non-constant, right? What was missing was that you are not looking at the full gamut of functions which come when you extend your domain and the range. You find that the number of circuits corresponding to unentangled states is much, much smaller compared to entangled, and we can safely speculate that as you keep on increasing the number of qubits, what will happen is that you will need much, much more entanglement. And that is what is actually going to speed up. Okay. And please notice that all these are deterministic. Is that okay? The minute it goes to 0, 0, I know that it is one of those 4 functions. I could make it probabilistic. For example, a function belonging to this particular coset, for example, may not be orthogonal exactly, whatever. In that, if I employ the same circuit, if it is 95% not orthogonal, if there is only 3% overlap, then I can make an even stronger statement about the probabilistic determination. But deterministically, this is something which is already done. Okay. So what we have said is summarized in this particular slide. We started with 4 qubits. Is that okay? 2 at the top and 2 at the bottom. Now we performed a simple SU2 cross SU2 operation on the bottom 2 fellows, which is costing us very little because it's a single qubit gate. Chi cannot in general be implemented by single qubit gates. You need because they are entangled. So you need single qubit plus 2 qubit gates. You need the C0 gates or whatever. But then you are able to isolate a set of 4 functions can be given 16 or whatever. Okay, that is the advantage that you have. Now what I want to do is to make a few statements which generalize these results to n qubits. Is that okay? First I will give you the naive generalization which is straightforward, and then I will give you a little bit more of generalization which I have not even bothered to write, but we will see what it is. Okay. So if I am given n qubits, here I have to be somewhat careful. If I have given n qubits, then there are 2 to the power of n values, 2 to the power of small n, which is written here. Is that right? If this 2 to the power of small n is written as a capital N, the number of functions is capital N to the power of n. Now we are dealing with a gigantic number of possibilities. That is what we are looking at. Is that right? Now among these gigantic possibilities, what is it that I want to do? I want to look at n squared functions. You might tell me, look here, n squared functions are very small compared to n to the power of n. My capital N is 2 to the power of n. I say never mind, because for example, if n is equal to 10, 2 to the power of 10 is already large. 10 to the power of 10 may be much, much larger. 2 to the power of 10 to the power of 2 to the power of 10 may be much, much larger. But 10 to the power of 10 is already quite large. 2 to the power of 10 is already large. So I will look at those functions and ask whether I can distinguish. I can make a circuit. The answer is indeed yes. Is that okay? So we have not bothered to write down the circuit and all that. We could have added a few more slides, but that is really not required. there are capital N to the power of n functions, and this n is 2 to the power of small n. Is that okay? Now, I can choose n squared functions. What are these n? N is 2 to the power of n squared functions. Is that okay? Now, the number of computational bases will be obviously be given by 2 to the power of n. If I had 3, it will go from 0 to 8, so on and so forth. So, those n squared functions will collapse to n categories, and one single measurement will tell you whether it is any one of those n measurements. Now, the number of, actually that is a subgroup consisting of n squared elements in terms of the oracle. Now, there are n to the power of n minus 2 cosets, and all that I have to do is to look at my previous chi, I to the power of 4 minus k naught. Go back and show it to you. Okay? So, what I have to do is to generalize this. This will be the capital N. And this k naught will take values 0 to n. Instead of 0, 1, 2, 3, I will have 0, 1, 2 to the power of capital N minus 1. That is what I will have. I have to look for them, I have to find them, and I have to do that. As you can see, it is entirely a matter of detail and not a matter of principle anymore. I have to have the patience. In fact, I can write down a program, small program, and I can fix it. So, in that sense, the problem of categorizing functions in this particular manner, the property testing, is sort of essentially solved. Now, if I go back and look at something interesting, we have to ask ourselves what is it that we did. What we did was to look at a subgroup of the unitary transformations which generate the functions, and we looked at the cosets. So, in principle, the number of ways I can categorize functions simply depends on how I choose my subgroup. Is that right? Now, if I have 256 elements, I ask how many subgroups are there. Is that okay? That is Z4 cross Z4 cross Z4 cross Z4. I can choose any one of them as a subgroup, and I can start immediately writing down all the cosets. Each of them will give me a certain property testing capability. Now, the most trivial one will be this full group itself. What does it tell me? It tells me I don't want to distinguish between the 256 functions. The most non-trivial will be the identity. Identity is a subgroup. Then there are 255 cosets. So, in principle, it tells me that I can build a quantum circuit. What does it tell me? Which I can distinguish each of the 256 functions by a single measurement. That is what this analysis tells me. What this analysis does not tell me is the complexity in the circuit. Is that okay? The complexity in the circuit. We know that there is a quantum circuit that will do the job. In fact, Pranay Sarkar, what he did was to send n to the power of n qubits, n to the power of n qubits, then you have that many basis states, and he showed that it is possible, that it is an enormous cost, but the fact is that it can be done. But what is the most interesting thing and important thing for us is that even if you admit only 16 functions, let us say, because there is a good number, there are any number of subgroups with 16 elements, 256. In fact, that is quite a large, 5 to the power of 4 or some such thing. Is that okay? Which is quite a large number. You can have that many categorizations of the functions depending on the property that you choose. You can ask for monotonic, non-monotonic, sawtooth, only 2 minima, only 3 maxima, so on and so forth. You could ask those questions, and in principle, we should be able to construct a circuit which will do this job. Okay. So, what remains is the following. We have to actually work it out and build a theory of circuits. And the unsatisfactory part of this whole analysis is that, okay, we are happy to see that there is an entanglement, but what is the role of the entanglement? Where does the entanglement play? Why is the entanglement crucial? For example, if you go back and look at this set of functions, what is it? Oh, I am pressing the wrong one, oh, sorry. Okay. If I look at these functions, okay, which require an entanglement gate, these are entangled states, contrast it is 0, 0, 0. My first impulse was maybe these functions have a lot of symmetry and these functions are very, very skewed. And for skewedness, I need entanglement. But unfortunately, when we scanned the nature of this function, the skewedness was uniformly distributed. What I was imagining is, for example, this function may have a sharp peak at somewhere and it may be 0 elsewhere. I thought maybe that is the kind of thing. But unfortunately, the morphology or the topography of a function does not give me any information as to why entanglement is required. In fact, there is a related question in error correction code. Error correcting codes are all entangled because you have 9 qubit states, additions, etc., and you can study the entanglement in many of the subsystems. But I have often wondered why that particular state and what is the role of the entanglement in order to do the error correction. It is not an easy answer. So that part is indeed unsatisfactory about it. We have to know the precise relation between where an entanglement is required to determine which function. That is missing. And our suspicion, at least my suspicion, I don't know whether the students share it or not, is that probably the 2-qubit case is too small an example. What we have to do is to look at 3 or 4. For example, Deutsch is extraordinarily cute, but it will not tell you how to generalize the Deutsch algorithm. If you go there, probably we will be able to get a better insight. That is one thing. And there is one stray entangled state. Okay, let me not spend too much time on that. So that is another thing. So in other words, the question of property testing of functions and categorizing them according to their property is a very, very well-posed problem in computer science. And that is something that we have looked at it from the viewpoint of the quantum information. And we seem to have arrived at an answer that it is possible to pose the questions in many, many manners, depending on how many subgroups are there for the generating function of the functions, my oracle. And we can have as many categorizations. And we believe that this is also important because in some sense that whatever we have done is complementary to what, for example, the period finding function does. When you are looking at a period, you are not interested in the shape of the function. It may come like this, it may be a nice sinusoidal function, or it may be piecewise constant, or maybe whatever the sawtooth or whatever. So suppose you know that a function is periodic, and I want to know what the function is. First determine the period by using Simon's algorithm, use the quantum Fourier transform. Then in order to know the function, now you don't have to scan the whole function, you can use this circuit and categorize the function precisely. So there is a little bit more work to be done. As I said, we have to write our results as theorems when we go to n qubits, 2 to the power of n, in terms of the cosets. But otherwise, this is what I wanted to say. Thanks a lot. Maybe there is a, yeah.
Any questions? Is there any dependence on a type of function? Like, I mean, does it work for both discrete and continuous functions, or?
We can't deal with continuous functions. We are dealing with n qubits. So what do you do?
So
depending on your resolution, you discretize it.
Yes.
And obviously, when we want to write a quantum algorithm, you discretize it to 2 to the power of n, right?
Yeah.
And then what you do is to later. So depending on what your required resolution is, you have to discretize.